Hey guys, we are back updating the power rankings for The Amazing Race 36 following episode 5, which ends up being another pretty standard episode, nothing too flashy at the end of the day, though there were some pretty interesting moments within it. But there are 9 teams to talk about, and let's waste any more time. Let's get right into the video. So starting off at number 9, we have the boots from this week, and here we have Kishori and Karishma, and this was largely to be expected, considering that they were in the back of the pack for a lot of the race, and this episode didn't really do them any favors, with them obviously being in the back of the pack for most of the time there. You also have them getting personal content at the beginning about losing their dad and how they have to live each day like it's their last, which was a pretty big red flag that they were probably going home here. And sure enough, the leg turns out pretty poorly for them, where despite them not being in last for a lot of it, they pretty much have no opportunity to catch up. And at the point where Sunny and Busy passed them on the detour, it just became pretty apparent that they were going home here. And obviously they were pretty mediocre racers, nothing too flashy, and it just made sense for them to go out in this spot. But obviously they're now out of the race to where they're here number 9. And with that, there are 8 teams left in the race to talk about, and as usual, I'll be ranking them based on how likely I think they are to win the race based on their edit and current race position. But at number 8, the team that I believe is the least likely to win from this point on is Derek and Chalisa. And it's kind of interesting how they started off the race in a pretty strong position, but they've really underperformed in recent weeks, where they have continued to slide further and further, where they were 6th place coming into this leg. And despite them holding on to the 7th place spot for a lot of it, they really fall behind after Sunny and Busy pass them on the detour, and they end up being second to last, which is pretty bad. And I feel like compared to other teams, I feel like they're kind of losing steam, and I feel like they haven't gotten as much content as other teams as well, to where it wouldn't shock me if they were taken out relatively soon, which is a big reason I had them here at number 8. Now moving on to number 7, and we have another team who I've continually gone down on, and here we have Yvonne and Melissa. And I feel like similar to Derek and Chalisa, they haven't really been getting as much content on the show. I feel like they're probably one of the least remarkable teams out here, where I feel like they're probably the most bland characters. And I feel like from a race standpoint, they're kind of just mediocre at this point. Where yes, while they do technically come out of this leg in a better spot, where they were 7th place at the start and they were able to pass one team to get into 6th place, then are they able to ride it out the rest of the leg? I feel like beyond that, they don't really bring as much to the table for me, and I feel like the show isn't really propping them up compared to other teams. So I feel like they're probably not winning, and a big reason I had them here at number 7. Now moving on to number 6, and this team had a pretty turbulent leg, but they were able to scrape on by, and here we have Sunny and Busy. And for a lot of the leg, they appear to be pretty dead to rights, where despite them being second to last coming into it, they do fall behind Kishori and Karishma on the way to the Thunderbird, and for a lot of it, it seemed like they had no chance of really catching up, where they just took forever to get to the roadblock, and it seemed like they were probably going to be eliminated, at least from a race standpoint. And they were even last place going into the detour, but they kind of get some lucky breaks here between Ron and Leticia getting lost on the way to the detour and Kishori and Karishma also getting lost. That really causes them to jump up 2 spots and causing them to somehow get a 7th place finish by the end of it, 1 spot above what they got at the beginning of the leg. So again, it is kind of an impressive recovery and kind of shows their ability to do well in the actual tasks. But really, I still feel like they're a team that is very inconsistent, and it wouldn't shock me if their luck runs out down the road, but we'll see what happens there. But for now, I feel like this leg was at least a good enough bounce back for them to be here at number 6. Now moving on to number 5, and we're moving on to definitely the major characters of the season, and it's just a matter of ordering them. But number 5, we have the team that kind of got dunked on to a degree, and here we have Angie and Danny. And this was a mostly solid leg for them, where they were 3rd place coming into it, and they were even 1st place coming into the roadblock, 1st place coming into the detour, but they end up falling behind later on the detour, where they end up falling all the way to 4th place, and we also get some negativity from them, where we see Danny like giving out too much information to other teams, and that kind of being an issue for them. And they do technically slide to 4th place by the end of the leg. So again, not bad on paper, but I feel like compared to other teams, I feel like they're probably not a team that I'm as faithful in, and I feel like the show is really highlighting a lot of their flaws at this point, which leaves them behind at number 5. Now moving on to number 4, and this team also had a pretty rocky leg, all things considered, and here we have Rod and Leticia. Now, technically, Ron and Leticia fared worse than Angie and Danny, where they came into the leg in 4th place. They did slide to 5th place by the end of it. And they also get massively lost on the way to the detour, where they think it's out of the city, which is all pretty funny. And I think a storyline that's really emerged across this season is the fact that Rod is this very competitive player, while Leticia is someone who is a bit more chill and someone who doesn't really work on the same wavelength compared to Rod. And I feel like that's been a major storyline during the season and a major flaw that they've had in that regard. And I feel like with this leg being mostly bad for them, despite their actual placement not being that bad, I feel like it is kind of setting them up to like potentially be like worse off in the future. But I feel like for now, considering the fact that they still managed to finish in the top half, I'm still going to lead them relatively high here, despite their flaws, which is why they're here at number 4. Now moving on to number 3, and we're going from a team that had a rocky leg to a team that had a pretty solid one. And here we have Juan and Shane. And this was a pretty good leg for them, where they did come into the leg in 5th place, but they managed to do pretty well here, where they managed to recover going to 3rd place at the start of the roadblock, jumping ahead to 2nd place by the end of it. They're even 2nd place at the detour, and they're able to eventually finish in 2nd place. So again, all that's pretty good for them, and I feel like they kind of reasserted themselves to a degree across this race, not to mention their confession at the beginning was pretty good about how they've been worrying about their position and that they had to stop worrying about other teams, and that really pays off for them, where they do manage to improve upon their previous placement. So again, I feel like they're definitely a team that's doing pretty well here, and a big reason why I had them here at number 3. Now moving on to number 2, and I did debate this placement to a degree, as technically this team did worse across this leg compared to last time, but they also got pretty positive content, and here we have Amber and Vinnie. And again, they technically moved down from last week, where they started off in 2nd place at the start of the leg. They fall all the way to 5th place at the start of the roadblock, but they managed to make up some ground at the detour, able to jump ahead to 3rd place and eventually finish in 3rd place. Not to mention their content in this episode about how like last leg was pretty rough for them, how they weren't seeing eye to eye, and that they had to work together as a team. So even though they technically finished worse than they did last time, we still saw them working a bit better together. We see Vinnie slowing down more for Amber, and I feel like that's a pretty positive look considering their placement here. But again, they're still a pretty dominant team. They're still a team that is in the front of the pack and a team that I expect to do well in the future. But I feel like there's a pretty clear number 1 at this point, which leads them behind at number 2. And now at number 1, the team that I believe is the most likely to win the Amazing Race 36 at this point is still Ricky and Cesar. And I feel like they're pretty clear frontrunners at this point, both from a race standpoint, but also from an edit standpoint. Or from a race standpoint, they've been extremely dominant to this point, with this being their 3rd win in a row, not to mention that their other 2 finishes are 2 2nd place finishes. Again, extremely impressive across the race. Now within this leg, they did have a bit of a setback in terms of getting to the roadblock, where they got lost on the way there. They fell all the way to 4th place, but they were able to recover. They're able to get to 3rd place by the end of the roadblock, and they're able to finish the detour first, despite the detour seeming to be the slower one, where I thought coming into it that the rock climbing one would be the faster one, but instead they're able to jump to 1st place by doing the performance one, which I find pretty impressive there. And I feel like their content as well has been pretty impressive, where they talked about like being in the front of the pack, and even during the detour, they get that confessional about how this shows why they love the race. So again, that feels like pretty unnecessary content, and I feel like the show is really going out of their way to propping them up. And I feel like from a race standpoint, but also from an edit standpoint, I feel like they're the pretty clear frontrunners at this point, which is a big reason why I still have them here at number 1. And there we go. That'll do it for this week's video. If you like this content, be sure to like and subscribe. Really helps out with the channel. Now I'll be back again next week to update the power rankings again, so you can forward to that. I'm covering other shows such as Survivor 46 and Big Brother Canada 12, so you can expect weekly power rankings of those shows. I'm on Patreon, so if you want to consider supporting the channel, you can do so by clicking the link in the description, and you can also join the Discord server by also clicking the link in the description. There's a lot of stuff coming your way, but for now, that is the video. See ya.